Special doubleheader episode of the Eternal Insiders Podcast coming your way. Two guests back-to-back from the same exact gym, set to feature on the upcoming Eternal 94 card at the Southport Sharks on March 15th. Two of CMBT's finest. First up, the returning Josh the Kamikaze Kuhne. Back off an 18-month absence, he joins us on the show to talk about that return. Fans will already be very familiar with Josh and his style. We know what he brings to the cage. Power and devastation. Everyone is looking forward to seeing him back when he takes on Jesse Medina at Eternal 94. Following that, another man out of CMBT, a returning legend, a former flyweight champion, a man that featured on the first 3 ever Eternal MMA cards. You already know who I'm talking about, the returning Tim Quickdraw Moore. He's coming back after almost a 6-year absence. He talks to us about why the time is right to come back to the cage now and what his plans are for the future. Will he stick around? Will this be his last fight? We'll find out once he gets finished inside the cage when he takes on Rod Costa at Eternal 94 as well. So stick around. 2 guests out of CMBT, 2 of their finest. Plenty to talk about. Let's get stuck into it.
Oh! First of all, introducing our challenger.
Out of the blue corner. He's going to step in and he does. It's all over.
Let's bring on the boom. This is Eternal MMA.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Eternal Insiders Podcast, powered by Ladbrokes, the official partner for Eternal MMA in 2025. Ladbrokes will have official markets on all cards going forward for Eternal MMA, starting from the very next card at Eternal 94. Speaking of Eternal 94, we are being joined today by one of the men set to feature on that card, making his long-awaited return to the Eternal MMA cage, one of the most violent men in the sport, one of the most dangerous men in the sport, one of the nicest men in the sport too, because he's taking some time out of his day to talk about the fights with us. Back on the podcast, which we much appreciate. It's good to talk to you again, Josh the Kamikaze Kuhne, mate. Back on the podcast. Appreciate your time here today. Mate, knowing you a year and a half outside of the cage, these hands, mate, must be getting itchy by now. What do you reckon?
Yeah, bro. I've got some itchy knuckles, man, like you wouldn't believe. I've been hungry for this, man. Been training good. Everything's been sort of bit crazy, a bit of a crazy camp. A lot of shit happening this time, but I'm so excited to get in there, man. Like you said, I got itchy knuckles like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, it's like pretty close to a year and a half away, man. And we're just time of recording a bit over a week and a half away from the fight. Crazy to think about. It's been such a long time. How have you kept yourself busy during this period? I know obviously you tattoo and you're a very busy family man and everything. What's that year and a half been like for you?
Yeah, man. Honestly, it's been work, family, being a dad, everything outside of fighting. I seem to probably have neglected a little bit of the rest of my life, as most fighters do, man. Like you sort of just dedicate everything to this sport. So I had a bit of catch up to do, man. And then with the economy, the way it is, the tattoo industry is, the first one that people make sort of cuts on. We're not such a necessity as much as some other businesses, So I was a bit more hands on deck in making art, getting back into tattooing, and being a dad. My kids are turning 4 this month, so just those crucial years with your kids, man. I sort of didn't want to miss any of that stuff too. So it's it's been a good sort of year and a half off, but now, man, I'm so hungry for this. We're so close to the fight now. I'm bringing the weight down. I'm just tully for this. I'm tully for violence.
I can tell, man. I can tell those hands are twitching right now. I mean, you talk about the kids too, 4 years old already, man. For the twins, that's wild, man. I remember thinking back to the photos when your kids were first born. Crazy times, man. I saw him on Instagram a couple of days ago. We talk about the hurricane that's coming in over you guys right now, and a little bit of a chip off the old block, maybe the daredevil action on the scooters out in the backyard, skidding through the rain. Yeah, they're crazy, man.
Dude, they cracked me up, man. I just got these twin boys, identical, and they're just rat bagging right now, man. It's actually it's hilarious. It's the best years, man. I love every moment of it.
Yeah, I love it, man. I was actually talking to your teammate at CMBT, Tim Moore. Of course, he's joining you on.
Oh, he's in here. We're just training right now.
Oh, he's right there, is he? Okay. Yeah, we're talking about the kids. Yeah, because he's obviously got little girls of his own. I was asking him for advice because I'm a first-time father myself. There he is,
Here
right
he
there.
is.
We're actually at the gym right now.
there.
I didn't realize this was at the gym. I thought you were at home, brother. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, nah, man. Like I said, it's been crazy trying to get training in between all these cyclones and all the shit going on. So I've only just jumped off the mats.
Yeah, of course. No, I thought you must have shot home, man. I thought, looking at the scene behind there. But okay, cool. Well, I appreciate the time joining us here today, brother. How is things going with the cyclone and everything, man? I keep seeing it's a little bit of stop-start and everything. I'm down here in Victoria, so nothing's touching me. But how much is it affecting your comings and goings in the lead-up?
Just a little bit with the gym hours and closing. My business is shut. A lot of people sort of freaking out. Everyone buying toilet paper because they think they're going to shit themselves for the next week or something. I don't know what's going on. It's just the same old stuff, you know. But nah, it's all right, man. Honestly, like it's good, man. I'm actually enjoying it because my kids are home from kindy. I get to spend a bit of time with them, so it's just family time for me and just training and just I actually enjoy it. I'm not worried at all.
That's fair enough, man. Yeah, MMA fighters are the toughest guys around, so you are well prepared for anything that comes your way, mate. Talking about your preparations, everything from the fight, you mentioned a little bit of adversity in terms of the camp and that sort of thing. Is that anything you can sort of get into? Is it just the usual stuff with MMA fighters? Like what can you share us there?
Yeah, a bit of the usual stuff. A couple of lingering injuries I won't let on too much about. And skin infections, man. Like fucking, I know a lot of gyms have had a lot of bodies and a lot of people sort of going through it at the moment. Just with the heat on the southeast Queensland or whatever. So a lot of people sort of spending time outside of the gym and not being able to train. So that definitely played a massive factor in it. I had to get on 2 courses of antibiotics myself throughout this camp, which sort of fucked me up a little bit. But no, all in all, man, like it is what it is. All this shit happens in fights. All this shit happens in preparations. There's not much you can do. You sort of just soldier on, keep moving, and just don't get in your own head about it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't talked to many fighters in the lead up to a camp outside of saying, hey, this is a great camp. It's not like, you're coming out with like a clean bill of health in any sort of state. I mean, you talk about the skin things when we saw like Brenton Mumford in hospital recently.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
The
So he's one of my training partners, man. So it's like, and to have him out and to like, just to have it sort of going through everyone's gym at the moment. We've heard about it, bro, all over the Queensland. I was speaking at a camp and he said, oh, this fighter, this person, it's like, it was crazy, man.
Maybe it's time to move back down to Victoria, mate.
No, I think everyone gets it. It happens in all the gyms. I know it does.
That's fair, brother. Hey, I mean, if the fighting thing doesn't work out, apparently you're a pretty keen handball player, mate. So maybe you can move into the handball side of things. Is that a true thing? You're pretty handy with the handball?
Yeah, I tell you what. It's just become some sort of little tradition at my house. So on Sundays, like it's just a family day for me. Everyone knows that I'm just going to be at home watching the UFC, and then after the UFC fucking finishes up, man, or whatever boys and my little brother or whoever's around, we just sort of started playing handball of a Sunday, and now it's just become a tradition. So like, yeah, I've reclaimed the throne. If anyone wants to challenge me at handball,
this
Sunday
guy right here,
house, let's go. Yeah,
hell yeah, open to all challenges, mate. I like that. Dangerous inside the cage, dangerous outside of the cage, multifaceted is Josh Kuhne. I love it, man. We just talked about your gym there too, CMBT. For this card for Eternal 94, I think I counted 9 of you guys rolling to this card?
9 of us, man.
9, man. Crazy, yeah.
We got half the card, man. It could have been the whole card. That's like 9 fights at the whole card, man. So, and everyone's training good. Everyone's going hard, man. We got a good team here. Like I can't, in the short amount of time this gym's been open, I've been here since the start, and how quick it's exploded. The work that the coaches do behind the scenes, Miles, Brenton, Jesse, everybody. It's just crazy to see how many active fighters we got here going out of here now, and like how good people are getting. Like we've got a champ, we got Tashi, we got so many Japanese fighters, and everyone's just passing through this gym now. It's fucking awesome to be a part of, man. I'm stoked.
No, it's it must be a special time to be a fighter at the CMBT gym. I mean, we just mentioned like 9 guys rolling in. Obviously, I talked to your training partner, Tim Moore. You've got guys like Peter Templar on the card, Yusuke Sato coming in there.
Yeah, Yusuke, man. Yusuke's a fucking, he's going to be the next superstar.
He's a killer, bro.
I'm going to call it now, man. That dude is like, he's just famous already. He's such a cool dude.
Yeah.
He's so awesome. He's got a good look. He's got a good aura, good energy. He fights like a weapon. He's entertaining. He wants to hurt people. I love it. I love that guy. I love the Japanese guys that we got here. Both of them, they're legends.
Yeah, I think you were front row to see his last performance late last year with that big knockout, man. Yeah. I was sitting cage side and look over at you and you're, he gets that big knockout, man. You're loving it.
Oh, no, I couldn't contain myself that night.
Hell yeah. No, I don't doubt it, brother. I don't doubt it. No, CMBT, big things happening there. Speaking of that, man, I mean, I think I originally spoke to you was back in 2021, and fascinatingly enough about you, in terms of your trajectory, you'd only been not even fighting, but only like hitting pads, like throwing strikes for 4 years up until that point.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about, because in that time span of that 4 years, I mean, you'd had 6 fights all told, 3 amateur and 3 pro fights. When you think about it that way, more fights that you'd had inside those years than you'd had actual years of even throwing a punch inside a gym, which is just nuts to think about.
Yeah, brother. Bro. Like the late coming of coming into this fighting, I started at 27 years old. So if anyone out there thinks, I'm too old to have a crash, well, you're not. You're just in your own head about it, man. Like everyone can. I think everyone should have a fight at one point. But yeah, when I did start, like I said, man, I went all in for years and years. I went hard. I trained every day. I fought as much as I could. I said yes to everyone, and I just went at it, you know. So like, as a business owner, as a father, as a family man, everything. Obviously, you neglect some parts of your life in order to pursue those dreams. So like, you know, that was that year and a half off now that I've had playing a bit of catch up. But and I've enjoyed this process that of, you know, having another fight camp again. So definitely, I don't think this will be my last one.
Well, what do you sort of think? It's been another 4 years now since that conversation. Like, what do you see in terms of the biggest changes that you've sort of seen yourself go through as a professional and as a fighter? Everything from inside and outside the cage, training at CMBT, like it's been a generous amount of time now. Since then, like, yeah, what are some of the things that you think you've developed and how you've kind of changed as a mixed martial artist?
I think my maturity's probably been the most thing that I've grown in. Like being mature as a professional, you know, early on I came in with just pure aggression, and I thrived on the fact that I just love challenges and loved hard things. So I'd like to you know, put myself in the tests and sort of learn those things. But then, you know, I've done a camp now, and like, you know, so many camps now, and got to that professional mindset, the way that I approach the fights, the way that I train, the way that I conduct myself outside of the fights, and the way that I'm able to you know, stay composed and have a steady mindset in my fights now, I think has been the biggest thing. So yeah, my maturity as a professional fighter carried me inside and outside the cage.
Do you think that's something that came out in your last fight, the last time we saw you fight for Eternal MMA back in September for Eternal 78, and you kind of had, especially in that first round, a more measured approach? Like, you weren't just like hunting the headshots sort of immediately. It kind of seemed like, yeah, more patient sort of Josh Kuhne. Obviously, it turned a bit of a scrap a little bit later in the fight until you ended it. But do you think that's kind of where it started coming out a little bit?
Definitely, massively. So that was the first fight that I'd really, you know, taken proper composure into. Like that was honestly the first fight that I can say that I went into that fight composed from start to finish. I could hear my coaches, you know, I could hear fucking what they said when I went to the stool. I know that like I was so gassed and so like, you know, I had so much of adrenaline overload when I was going back to the stool. I didn't even know what the fuck was going on half the time. You know, it was so loud in the Sharks clubs with all my fans and stuff. It was just such like an overwhelming experience. But then having, you know, matured in my approach, in my mindset, I feel like, like it really, that was the last fight was my first fight that I really felt like I was actually a professional. And it'll be exciting to go back in now, having done that, and then, you know, taking another fight now and having the experience and sort of been through that. I think my best is yet to come now, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, we look ahead to this fight now. I mean, going up against Jesse Medina, you take a look at your record. I mean, this is a massive step up in terms of at least the experience factor, because Jesse are coming in with 32 pro fights to his name. Like, when you actually stack up, like, all the other fighters that you've been against and their pro records, like, he's damn near got as many pro fights as, you know, the entire other records combined of those guys. I mean, you've faced some experienced guys like, you know, Dimps and Abdallah and all that sort of thing, but the experience factor is huge, man. Is the preparation side of things vastly different for a guy like Jesse just based on the experience factor?
Preparation in terms of like game planning, yeah, of course. It's like it's going to be a little bit different with every fight. I don't know if we'll see what happens. You know, this guy's so experienced, he can take the fight anywhere, you know, like he's not scared. Obviously, look at his record, look what he's doing, you know. The guy's a fucking gamer. I've seen him do fight, you know, I've watched a bit of his tape. I've seen him fight until the last 30 seconds of the fight, and he just, you know, flips the script on people. So it's like he's not going anywhere. I want to be alert. I'm not going to let off, and I'm going to approach it the way that we're prepared for it. And yeah, it's a little bit different this time than every other time.
You've earmarked him obviously as a submission threat, and I mean that's obvious. He is definitely a submission threat with 12 of his wins coming by way of submission. We talked about your skill set and what you bring to the table in terms of these hands, brother, just like knocking out people left, right, and center. You just talk about him being a gamer there, but I mean, if this fight turns into a classic Kamikaze fight and it turns into one of these ones and it's not going to the ground, do you think Jesse is someone that can realistically hang with you there? Like, what are your sort of thoughts? No?
He can't.
Okay.
He can't, man. Like, I think by the time we do this weight cut and I get down there and I rehydrate, I'm going to be a bit bigger, a bit more powerful. Every round starts on the feet. So it's like, you know, if he can get a hold of me and he can keep me down there, you know, I'm going to survive each round. I'm going to get back on the feet, and he better not be letting to let up one moment of fucking chance, because if I do and I hit him, it's lights out for just about fucking anyone. Him no exception, you know, like I'm telling you. And the only person I couldn't knock out is Dimps. I hit Dimps hard.
Yeah,
fucking,
brother.
it's real fucking hard. I don't think anyone can knock Dimps out. I'm going to go out and say Dimps is unknockoutable.
Yeah, studies have got to be done on that man's brain and his skull when he eventually shifts off this Mortal Kombat, man. Because, like, speaking of that fight, I mean, anyone who hasn't seen that Kamikaze Kuhne fight, I mean, go and check that out. Where it's UFC Fight Pass YouTube, like one of the greatest fights of all time. That fight, I can't remember if I told you this, not that you probably remember, but that fight went down on the night of my wedding, and I was out of reception. I couldn't watch that fight.
No, you couldn't tell me that.
Yeah, no, I was like, so I'm out in the middle of Whoop Whoop at my now wife's family farm. And I was like, oh, Kuhne versus Dimps on this night. I'm like, oh, look, maybe you'll be a fizzler. Who knows? Well, I'll catch up with it. And then I'm trying to get reception. And, like, I'm seeing all these comments on Facebook as loaded, like, the greatest fight of all time. I'm like, what the fuck have I missed out on? Yeah, it just turns out I missed out live on the greatest fight we've seen in Australian mixed martial arts history, man. That was one for the books, yeah. Crazy.
Fuck, it was a cracker. Even, I lost that fight, but I still loved that fight, man. It did a lot for me. It showed me about, like, what I'm made of.
Stocks
what I thought I was made of, and then it proved it, win or lose. I showed heart and fucking, I took that thing right to the end. Didn't let up a second. And honestly, if I'm going to lose to anyone, I'm glad it was to that guy because he's a legend, man.
Yeah, I mean, you don't make too much business of losing anyway, man. I mean, just looking at, your record and all the fights you've been in, even from like the start of the amateur career, and you stack this fight up against Jesse Medina. I mean, from a fan's perspective, it's pretty much a guaranteed finish. Like, your wins have all come by way of finish, and like 96%, all but one of Jesse's fights have come by way of finish, man. Interesting little tidbit about yourself, speaking of the finishes. Across 7 of your fights, if my math is correct, and look, my math isn't my strong suit, for all of your wins, just over 11 minutes of total cage time, mate. Like, not even like a full 3-round fight have you total across all of your wins, man. Like, I don't know where I'm going with that, but that's a crazy cool stat.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure going into my pro debut, and then even a couple of fights after my pros. I hadn't even been around. First couple of fights, yeah. I hadn't even done a round's worth of ring time, man. So but I think Dimps was the first time that I got out of the first round from memory.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So that was like, that was the first time I thought I could knock anyone out. And that was a big maturity lesson for me, because it was like, no, you can't knock this guy out, like, oh, maybe on a different day, on a different setting now, with a different approach, maybe I can. But up until then and that moment, and when I lost and learned those lessons, I thought that was the case.
I mean, you also didn't get knocked out either, man. It was you two guys like right there to the very end. So, I mean, both of you guys like showed tremendous heart in that one, man. And it's what's kind of raised your profile to this point, like even bigger. And I mean, we talk about this card like one of the fastest selling cards, or the fastest selling card from what I'm told in Eternal MMA history. And I think you've got a lot to do with that, man, up on the Gold Coast. So,
we're selling tickets left, right, center, man. Yeah. If and the Kamikaze show, come to one of my events. It's fucking lively. There's no energy like it, and it's like, and it's no discredit to any other fighter or anything. I think I just bring a different energy to the room. I think I just bring people, bring them back to that gladiator fucking prehistoric feeling where they're like, oh, we're going to see something here,
Yeah, baby.
I love that shit. I love making people feel something. That's what brought me into the sport, People feel raw emotion, man. That's not something that everybody gets to experience. I get to experience it in both my professions. In being a tattoo artist, I get to bring people joy, bring people happiness, bring people all sorts of emotions. And then in this sport, I also get to do that, which is it's actually pretty beautiful, to be honest.
No, it's great, man. You're winning at life. Such an example for fighters out there, and just a man who so many skills on your resume. I mean, they remember like talking to you, back in 2021, and everything from the motorbikes, man, and the art and the tattoos and the fighting, man. Like so many feathers, so many strings in your bow, mate. Like it's so many options for you. But I'm selfishly glad we got you back in the Eternal MMA cage for this one, brother. Versus Jesse Medina, obviously a former featherweight title challenger, is Jesse Medina with a big record. Like we said, you get the job done here, man. This would be obviously by far and away your biggest profile win to date, certainly. Like, are you smelling something big for this one in terms of making another big Kamikaze statement? Like, what's on your mind when you think about this one?
I want to knock this guy out, and then I want to call for BKFC to come to Australia and take me on, because I think that sport was made for me.
Big plans, man. I don't doubt that with these hands, man. Like we said, they're itchy, they're ready to go, and we get that one coming up on March 15th. Like, again, time of recording, a little more than a week and a half away. Vendy versus Myers for the Eternal MMA Middleweight Championship. Like we said, though, tickets selling fast. A lot to do with this man here, Josh the Kamikaze Kuhne. So make sure you get on eternalmma.com. Get those tickets as soon as possible. If you're not going to be there, obviously UFC Fight Pass live and exclusive to see an absolute cracking night of fights go down at the Southport Sharks. And Josh, thank you for joining me here again, brother. Always a pleasure to talk to you. All the best on March 15th, man. And we'll talk to you on the side. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.
And speaking of Eternal 94, we are being joined today by one of the men who is set to compete on that very card Not only that, but making his return to the cage for the first time in almost 6 years, a former Eternal MMA flyweight champion, a man who competed in the very first 3 Eternal MMA events, an absolute legend of the sport here in Australia, making the return to do the dance one more time when he takes on Rod Costa at Eternal 94. You know who it is, Tim Quickdraw Moore. Tim, it's got to feel good, man. I mean, we're talking about, less than a week and a half away from being in your first competitive fight, at least inside the cage for almost 6 years. How does it feel to hear that out loud, brother?
Oh, it's just unreal. It's honestly, it's like first fight feels. It feels like my first fight all over again. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And I appreciate you joining me here tonight, man. We spoke obviously to tee up this interview, and we're trying to work out a time slot. And you were just talking about getting the kids to bed and everything, and being able to join us here on the show. So I appreciate you're a busy man. Obviously, you're training, you're working, everything. So thanks for fitting us in tonight. I'm a first-time dad myself. Just got a little 6-month-old. Any advice for me, man, as a first-time father? You got 3 beautiful kids. Surely you got some words of advice.
Yeah. Congratulations, first off, and it's a forever new learning curve. Every stage will just show you a new sort of thing that you thought you were going to be all across, but you just weren't. But yeah, no, it's just sick. It's a whole new thing just to take your time up, eh? Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Is that you got 3 girls?
3 girls, yep. I got a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
7-year-old Heidi, and twins Hazel and Holly that are 3, just about 4.
Man, that must keep your hands full, man.
That's wild. And it's another reason why I had to start up fighting again, eh?
Oh yeah, just get some of that misplaced energy, that sort of thing. Get out of the house and do something different, mix it up.
Yeah, and just future-proof myself just for the dramas that are going to come down the track.
Fair enough, man. No, I understand. I don't understand on your level because I'm not a competitive fighter. And I mean, look, we're basically the same age. I've got a lot to learn. I'm juggling a 6-month-year-old here, a 6-month baby my own right. So a lot to learn. So I'll look to you as an example of what to do in the future, mate, if you don't mind. But we'll see how things play out there. Yep. I appreciate it. But so obviously this is the comeback fight, man, after almost 6 years outside of the cage. I guess the big question on everyone's mind is, why is this sort of now the right time to come back? We spoke a couple of years ago and you were talking about potentially coming back in maybe sort of 2022. You had a lot of great fights for Eternal MMA. You're a former champion, 2025 now. Why is now the time for the return?
I think because I started training in the new gym. I started training at CMBT a few years back when Shannon Ross got his call up to the UFC through the Contender and that. So he sort of drew me back into the sport as a training partner. And once I got back in there, and I just realized that it's something that, as long as my body will allow me to, it's something I'll probably always just want to keep doing. Yeah, until the wheels fall off, I think. I
think when we spoke, you talking about Shannon Ross there. I think you were helping him maybe train for one of his fights in the UFC at that time.
Yeah, pretty much. Once he sort of got that call up for the Contender Series, that's sort of what drew me sort of back into the training, sort of in the MMA regard. So, yeah.
Had you always sort of had the itch, like in that kind of 6 years being off? It's a long time outside of the cage. We talk about when we last spoke. Did you have kind of that inkling that you wanted to come back prior to this, and the right sort of opportunities sort of didn't materialize? Were there other opportunities that sort of didn't come to fruition in that time?
Oh, I think back onto the parenting thing. I think those first 3 years of being a parent, it's just chaos. I don't know how people can fight and do those sort of things in those first couple of years without that sort of support. Me and my wife don't really have any support, so we were sort of doing it on our own. So it was tough, and I think that sort of is a big reason why I sort of stood away for a while. But now the kids are at an age where it's manageable. I can take them to the gym and they can sit there and play for an hour and a half with other kids that are there while I do a training session. So it's not taken away from my family time.
Has much changed in terms of the dynamic about how you kind of go about your day and your week? Last time we spoke, I think you were talking about, obviously you were still training and everything in the gym. Obviously, like we just mentioned, you were managing your job, working during the day. I think on the tools, the chippy, if my memory serves me correctly back then. Is it a little bit different now that you're not just training in the gym to sort of keep fit and train with the guys and keeping them sharp, and now you're training for a return fight? Have things sort of ramped up and you've got to be a bit more kind of creative with your time during this period?
Yeah, definitely. A good thing is I never really got unfit or unhealthy and stood away from like having that sort of solid base of fitness. So I think that has helped a little bit in regards to not having to make it a fit camp, so to speak, as opposed to a fight camp. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I was just sort of, it's always just sort of something that yeah, I don't know. I can't really tell you. Hey.
I mean, you made your pro debut back in 2011. Like we said, start of the show, you competed on the first 3 Eternal MMA events. Back in 2013 is when that started for Eternal MMA, where you competed. You headlined Eternal 1. You were the flyweight champion in 2015. Like, when you sort of think back, all those years ago, has the time flown by for you, or does it seem like a lifetime ago when you think about those first events?
Oh, it's both. It's both in the same breath. Like sometimes you look back and you're like, oh wow, that was so long ago, and then I feel like I've got a 7-year-old, so it was at least well past 10 years ago that those sort of things were happening. So when you put it out there like that, it seems like a long time ago, but to me it was just yesterday. Really, I can sort of remember because they were at the Southport Sharks. The very first one was there, and yeah, it's just sort of you can sort of take yourself back to that place, and it wasn't that long ago.
A lot of great memories made, I'm sure, for Eternal MMA, man. I'm, thinking about, obviously becoming the flyweight champion. A lot of great fights, a lot of great opponents, taking on the likes of Sean Etchell a couple of times, beating him for the championship. Is there anything that stands out, a particular fond memory for you? Something that's actually funny that I think about when I look at that article where we spoke last time and talking about Eternal 2, and you mentioned to me that your opponent at that time actually wanted to fight you in the parking lot before the fight. And everything, there's a little bit of beef and everything back before the actual fight sort of kicked off, and things were going to kick off before the fight itself. Like, how vivid are those kind of memories in your mind?
Oh, they're still there. I can remember that. Like walking in, that was one of the ones at the Runaway Bay, I think it was. And yeah, it's just it's crazy. All those same teams are still sort of kicking about. Just obviously new faces, and the faces that were fighting are generally coaching now. So it's almost like it's nothing's really changed. It's the same sort of people, just newer and younger competitors. Besides myself and Rod, really.
Any particular fights or anything, like performances or anything that stand out from your career? A lot of fights to choose from, a lot of great memories, a lot of great success and everything. Any particular matches or anything that you sort of look back on that you're particularly fond of, like any of your title fights or anything like that? Any standout opponents? Like, what have you sort of enjoyed when you think about those parts of your career from a competitive aspect?
Yeah, there's well, all of them have their own sort of little story with like every sort of fight or fight camp has like its own little story with a change of opponent throughout or some sort of niggling injury. But probably the one with like Luke Morris was my probably one that stands out the most, which at the point at that time I didn't really feel like a big deal, but now looking back at it, like he was a good friend and training partner that we spent a lot of time on the mat prior to the fight, and then having to fight someone that you've spent a lot of time training and preparing for fights with, and then being almost dropped with a real hard kick in the first or second round and then coming back. Yeah, so probably that one would probably stand out with like the biggest adversity in terms of preparing to fight a mate and then facing adversity with the other fight.
This was a title fight, wasn't it? You were defending the flyweight championship in this fight.
Yeah, I think that was my sort of second or third title defense. I think before Drilic came and started knocking every cunt out. I was the sort of only one to defend it. But Drilic has surpassed that with what he was on.
No, I mean, you've left a fantastic legacy for these guys to live up to, man. So, yeah, Drilic is certainly doing his thing. Obviously, we saw him in action last weekend, man. But you got to keep in mind that you paved the way for a lot of these flyweights, a lot of great flyweights that we've had since go on. You think of guys like you fought Stephen Erceg now in the UFC, the flyweight division for Eternal MMA has certainly been well represented, man. We look forward to, man, you just mentioned there before in Rod Costa, who's your upcoming opponent. Somebody you're already familiar with, obviously from around the traps, but someone you've competed against recently, late last year, I believe it was, in a submission grappling match. How much did you learn about Rod from a competitive standpoint in that fight?
Oh, a lot. He's one of those dudes that everyone talks about, these like guillotines and all these like controls that people have, and I'm sort of like a bit blasé about him, like I'll like shoo it down a bit. And then actually competing with him and feeling his squeeze and feeling what he actually has, it sort of it's made me actually respect and know that it's something I can have to respect in this fight. I can't just dismiss it like I normally would in any other sort of fight I would be having.
I mean, to be fair, I mean that is definitely Rod Cost as well. Like, you know, one of the best submission grapplers in the country. One of the best submission grapplers in the world. I mean, we know that Rod is a medalist, you know, in world jiu-jitsu competitions and that sort of thing too. But I mean, this fight coming up is an MMA fight, man. So this is very different. Obviously, there's grappling and obviously there's submissions and everything involved too. But like, given that you've already competed against him in a grappling match, and you know, when you talk about the context of both of your skill sets in an MMA fight this time around, like,
Yeah.
obviously it's a very different setting, but like, how different do you think this is in terms of what you guys both bring to the table when you think about your skill sets and what you bring to the table as competitors? Like, do you see yourself as having a bit of a competitive edge in this one, given that it's not strictly on the mats this time?
I would hope so. I would hope so. Otherwise, just sort of do it out for a fight in something that I don't have an edge in. But no, I think with the grappling, it was 100% Rod's world. At least with the MMA fight, I can make it scrappy. I can make it ugly. I don't have, there's certain rules that you have to adhere to in grappling matches, which you don't have to adhere to in a fight. You can do certain things that are probably going to change outcomes of things. So yeah, I'm just excited. I'm just excited to test myself again against someone who is worthy of testing myself against, essentially, as silly as that sounds.
No, not at all. I mean, there's a couple of things I want to touch on there. You did mention on Instagram in a post I saw recently referencing that you compete at the very first Eternal MMA event, and this one you'd be hanging up the gloves for. Is that still definitive in your mind? Are you still thinking that this is the last one? Was that something that was said in the spur of the moment? Are you open to, you know, still competing going forward? Like, where do you sort of stand in your mind when you think about the context of the remaining part of what is essentially coming towards the end of your career?
Well, it's hard to tell because like with that break that I had and now training smarter, doing better things with my nutrition, I'm able to yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. See how this fight goes.
You're feeling good. You're feeling good. You're feeling sharp. You're feeling loose.
I feel good. Like it feels like I've honestly, this is cliche and this is probably what every fighter says, but this has honestly been the best I've ever felt for a fight in my 20-odd fights. I have not trained as professionally as this in the sense that I've stuck to a strict sort of, when I say strict program, but it's been loose with times and whatnot, but I've stuck to like a consistent training program where I've committed to it and I've not let things slide because of outside of commitments. And yeah, this is the most professional I've ever applied myself for a fight. So yeah, we'll see how we go.
It's a very fascinating matchup to me when I think about a couple of guys that have been around Eternal MMA for so long, like a couple of really true pioneers, and certainly yourself at the forefront of that. And just in terms of a stylistic matchup and everything, there's just so many different things we can sink our teeth into in terms of why, like, this is such a great matchup. And we just talk about there too, as far as you know, coming to sort of this latter part of your career and potentially this being the end, maybe not, depending on how we're feeling going forward. But was the opponent pivotal for you in terms of coming back for this fight? I'm curious as to how this sort of fight got put together. Was Rod someone that you had in mind and maybe you might have asked for? Was it presented to you and you just said, let's kind of do it? I know you accept all challenges, of course, but how did this one sort of come together in essence?
My output on it is we can't have half a fight in a jiu-jitsu match. We have to sell it with a proper fight. Like, we can have like a slap jiu-jitsu match and consider that a fight. We have to have a proper fight and settle it like real men. Like, and I love Rod. He's he, like I've said this to Ben, his coach. He's like a legend, and I could it's just a worthy sort of fight for myself. I think we're both good fights for each other in the sense that we're both not young, hungry guys trying to make a name of each other. We're both at the tail end of our career. We both have never probably said no to a fight ever. I know I haven't. I'm assuming he'd be the same way. So yeah, it's just a good stylistic match for everyone involved, I think.
No, I remember when I saw this one get advertised for the first time during one of the recent Eternal MMA events, going back a couple of months ago, and seeing the return of Tim Moore facing off against Rod Costa. I legitimately got off my couch, man. I'm like, holy shit, this is fantastic. I'm looking forward to this one, man. Genuinely looking forward to this one. It's going to be a cracker. You mentioned at the top of the pod there too, training now at CMBT. You look down the list, and I mean, rolling into Eternal 94, 9 deep as far as fighters goes is CMBT, man. I mean, you talk about obviously yourself there, the likes of Josh Kuhne, Peter Templar, Yusuke Sato, to name a few. Like, it's got to feel good, man. Like, rolling to this one, like going to war, for one more ride, like with so many of your teammates, man. Like, it's got to be good energy.
It is. It's good. It's good because everyone's in the gym working hard together, and it's good to see. And honestly, the best thing about it is not even the dudes fighting. It's like there's guys that are in there every day helping everyone that's fighting. And that's what, like, I get my kicks out of. Seeing like there's a guy like Dan Gale in our gym. He's fighting in the next proving grounds, I think. And he's in there as a body for everyone. He's putting his body on the line. Same with Reese McLaren. He's in there just putting his body on the line for everyone in the gym. And like there's heaps of dudes in there.
It's crazy, man. Like, I was thinking about this the other day, like just looking down the list of guys that are at CMBT, and I've talked to so many of them, but like it's just like a never-ending pipeline seamlessly of just new talent kind of, coming through. I mean, you mentioned a few of them there before. A lot of the guys that compete on this card, I think of, guys like Christian Lapham coming through, obviously Brenton Mumford being one of the coaches there, yourself making a return. Like, the gym is just stacked with talent, man. We just saw Taser Malone in a title fight. Like, what is it about that gym that is just so attractive for people coming in and, wanting to get their licks in there and set them up for success?
I think that's just when they get in there and they see the work getting done. Like the results are one thing, but when you go into a gym and you see that the coaching staff and the work that's getting done in the gym, that's sort of what attracts people. Well, I believe that's what attracted me there. Just the people in there, they're not messing around. They're getting their work done. They're not effing around. They're just working hard.
I don't know if this is important to you or not, but the last time that we saw you competitively in MMA was back at Eternal 45 when you took on a man that we mentioned earlier, Stephen Urseg, of course, one of the best flyweight representatives that we've had here at Eternal MMA, now doing massive things, of course, over in the UFC. When you sort of look back and you think to that fight way back in 2019, was there any motivation in terms of you thinking about coming back and getting in the cage one more time? Was it purely based on just wanting to compete again, or was there a small party that thought, if this is coming towards the end of my career, I want to see if I can put a W on the record before it's all said and done? Was that at all a factor in your mind at all when you thought about coming back?
Oh, it's always a fairy tale to go out on a win. I think that's every sort of fighter's dream. But fairy tales are for children. Sorry, what's happening now?
Still got you.
Sorry, mate. Someone's trying to call me.
That's normally what happens when it kind of blacks a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I got you.
Yep. So sorry, in terms of Usyk, was that? Sorry, I lost you.
Yeah, so we're just talking about, like, obviously the last time we saw you was competing against Steve. Obviously that fight didn't go your way back at Eternal 45, and just asking when you were factoring in coming back and competing again, if coming back and looking to potentially end your career, with a win was necessarily important to you or not. Obviously you want to get the win, but was that a factor in you wanting to come back? Is that, hey, I want to potentially end my career and give myself a chance to end it with a win?
Yeah, well, that's like I said, that's a fairy tale for most fighters, but fairy tales are for children. Like, not everyone gets one, but no, honestly, it's just the work that I know that I've been putting in. When I fought Usyk, I was a new time dad. I think my eldest would have been just over a year old, and I was probably training 3 days a week, if that. And I didn't really commit to it the way that you have to commit to a fight. And I just know now that I would just like to have a crack with a team around me that is, it's a different sort of team. It's a more of a collaborative coaching as opposed to the hierarchy coaching at CMBT, where every different coach is going to put their bit of sprinkle of stuff on it, and everyone's open to that. Where it's just I just wanted to have a crack and see how we go with that within that environment.
When you talk about things like legacy, when I spoke to you a couple of years ago and you asked you know, when it's all sort of said and done, whenever that might be, how you'd sort of like people to kind of look back at you and your career and what your legacy might be. And one of the things you said was, you know, something you said in the middle of the podcast here, in that you never cherry pick your opponents, you never turn down opponents, you know, whether it was a smart idea or not. You thought that a lot of fans would see you in that light as well, you know, given the level of opponents you face, given the caliber of the competition you face, the frequency, the strength of schedule, everything kind of rolled into one. I mean, basically a man who simply faced all challenges regardless of the circumstance. Is that sort of still how you view the legacy of your career as we kind of come towards the end?
I believe so. I don't think anything's going to change. Like even with Rod, like Rod's like proficiently one of the best grapplers in Australian MMA. And I've predominantly been known as a grappler throughout my MMA career. So on paper, I've just picked a fight with the worst dude I could have, like realistically. So, yeah, in that sense, I think it sort of proves that I'm actually willing to just fight and just try to do what I can to put on an entertaining fight.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, you've potentially left the book open where this might not necessarily be the end, depending on how fresh you're still feeling. It sounds like you're feeling fresh. You're looking great. You're looking sharp, man. If we keep competing after this fight, happy days, sign me up. But, I mean, if this does end up being the last one, I don't like to ask for predictions on fights like that or anything like that anymore. But, you know, in terms of potentially coming in for what might be your last fight, like, is there anything that's going to, like, what's it kind of going to take for you to look back on this weekend, you know, coming up at Eternal 94 and just say, like, that was enough for you, that you were satisfied? Is it enough to just go in there to get the win? Like, do you want to make a big statement? Like, what's it going to take for you to say, like, that was potentially my last fight and I'm truly satisfied with how that weekend went at Eternal 94?
Well, honestly, from here on out, the last week and two of fight camp is just fine-tuning stuff, and nothing dramatic really happening. So as long as we keep going with the fight camp as we're meant to, get to the fight night, regardless of the result, I know I've put in the work, and I can go out there, and I know the work that I put in should produce a result that I'm going to be proud of. So yeah, that's like, that in itself is all I'm really wanting to achieve.
Well, whatever the result might be, man, I mean, incredibly excited for this one. Like I said, facing off against Rod Costa, Tim Moore versus Rod Costa in his return fight for Eternal 94. The people's main event in this one, I believe. Cannot wait for this one, man. Absolute pleasure to have you back. Great to talk to you again. First time here on the pod, but always some great insight, you know, when you talk, and pleasure to speak to you way back when I did. You know, back when we did the article and reflected on your career and all the great memories and moments that you provided for Eternal MMA. Fantastic champion. Again, one of the men that competed on the first three Eternal MMA cards, and one of the pioneers of the sport here in Australia. So I just want to wish you all the best, man, for Eternal 94. Cannot wait for it. Massive card. Get your tickets at eternalmma.com, of course. Tune in live on UFC Fight Pass and check this one out for what is potentially maybe the last fight of your career, depending on how it goes. If it is, I wish you all the best in whatever comes next, man. But who knows what the future holds. All I can say is all the best, and we'll talk to you soon. And yeah, looking forward to the next time we speak, man.
Awesome. Cheers, Luke. Today.
Oh, my! That was huge.